After escaping her kidnapper, a bruised up and agitated Sherri turns up on the side of the highway and flags down a car. In a state of panic and fear, Sherri tells the woman driving the car she's been kidnapped. The woman recognizes Sherri as the Sherri Papini reported being kidnapped all over the country, so she calls 911.
Oh my God, you're Sherri Papini. Sherri!
Weeks earlier, we meet Sherri Papini. She lives a perfect life in a beautiful house along with her loving husband, Keith. In addition to being an ideal wife, Sherri is also a loving mother to two gorgeous kids, Hannah and Cameron. With today as Cameron's birthday, the Papini couple throw a small party in their backyard and invite their neighbors and friends. The party seems to be going great, as everybody has a good time. Sherri delivers a small speech to everyone about how proud she is of her life and her two kids. Just then, the bouncy castle is deflated while the kids are inside. Thankfully, Sherri jumps to action and saves the kids in time.
It's okay. Everyone's fine.
However, Sherri is visibly stressed. Her friends, Caitlin and Laura, commend her for what she did and call her superwoman, but still, Sherri is upset. Despite having a perfect life and an ideal marriage, Sherri feels unfulfilled. Despite her husband's efforts to make her happy, Sherri still feels unseen by him, which makes her upset. After Keith says sorry for that, Sherri asks to get a job, since the couple also have their financial struggles. Keith assures her they'll get through this by tightening their belts. He also tells Sherri doesn't need a job, since she's too busy with the kids. The next morning, Sherri packs the lunch boxes for her children. After dropping them off at the kindergarten, Sherri runs into Caitlin. Despite knowing Sherri has a perfect life, Caitlin senses her unhappiness and tells Sherri she's always available if she wants to reach out and talk, to which Sherri mindlessly says thanks before she walks off. Meanwhile, Keith is at work. He's had his job for 5 years. He is so good at it that he asks his boss for a raise, wanting to get through his financial struggles. As his boss turns him down, Keith gets a text message from his wife, asking him to come home and be with her. Even though he wants to, Keith says no, having a job he needs to focus on. Later that day, Sherri puts on her sneakers and goes jogging. As something catches her eye, Sherri gets snatched. Following this, Keith comes home to find that nobody's home. Keith tries calling Sherri, but she doesn't answer. He calls the kindergarten and finds out Sherri never came to pick Hannah up. The kindergarten tried calling her, but she never picked up. That's why Keith decides to have his mother pick Hannah up. Afterward, Keith tracks Sherri's phone using the GPS and finds its location. After driving to the place where Sherri was jogging earlier, Keith only finds Sherri's phone, her earphones, and a lock of her hair showing struggle. This genuinely worries Keith, so he calls the police. After the police arrive to investigate the scene, Keith meets the lead detective Molly and her partner Anthony. After going to Keith's house, Molly asks Keith a few questions about Sherri. She tells him Sherri might have been kidnapped. This makes Keith more distraught. Molly asks if Sherri has any mental health problems, which implies that Sherri might have abandoned Keith and the kids. Keith is positive that Sherri wouldn't do this to him or the kids. He believes that Sherri has been kidnapped and that somebody did this to him. With Sherri's absence, Keith has to replace her and be a mother to his kids. Noticing their mother's absence, Cameron asks his dad where she is. Keith tells them their mother just went on a trip alone to clear her mind, which the kids find a little bit weird.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Sherri arrives at a house along with her ex-boyfriend Chris. It turns out Sherri was not kidnapped. This is a hoax, as Sherri had Chris kidnap her so she could be with him. Meanwhile, life for Keith becomes burdensome, as he has to make breakfast for his kids, prepare them for their day at the kindergarten, and drop them off there. Following this, Keith organizes a search party and spreads missing flyers about his wife. He also states to the press that he will find Sherri no matter the cost. 4 days later, Sherri is still missing. She is at Chris's apartment. It turns out that Sherri lied and told her ex-boyfriend Chris that Keith is an abusive husband, which is why she wants to abandon him. That's why she wants to live with Chris for the rest of her life.
I should never married him.
Not only that, but Sherri wants her kids to be with her, so Chris promises to get them for her. Later, Sherri's mother, Loretta, visits Keith and decides to help him take care of the kids. Though Loretta's relationship with her daughter is strained, Keith decides to set that aside and welcome her in. After all, Keith is at a low point and needs all the help he can get. The kids don't seem to be fond of their grandmother, as they secretly ask their dad when she's going to leave. Keith glares at them and tells them to just be polite. The next day, Keith agrees to be interviewed by Inside the Headlines, eager to spread the word about his missing wife.
Keith, your wife has been missing for 5 days.
Not only does Keith promise to find her, but he also gets emotional about how much he misses her, being worried sick about the health of his kidnapped wife. Now, Sherri's been missing for 15 days. As Chris makes her some scrambled eggs and bacon, Sherri watches the interview Keith did with Inside the Headlines. Sherri learns about the money Keith raised and the huge support he got to find her. As the days go by, Keith starts feeling weak and lost. Loretta tells him not to give up and to keep fighting to find Sherri while she takes care of the kids.
I'm gonna help you.
Meanwhile, Sherri goes over the internet and watches what people say about her. She watches her worried friends Caitlin and Laura describing her as a good woman who wouldn't hurt a fly. Much to her surprise, Sherri watches her mother talking to the press, telling her to come home. Just then, as Chris's cousin Andrew knocks on the door, Chris tells Sherri to hide. As Chris tries to keep Andrew out of the apartment, Andrew nags him with questions about how he's doing. Just then, Andrew gets a glimpse of Sherri peeking from behind the door. Chris tells him he has a girlfriend, and he tries to make it work with her. Andrew tells Chris to break a leg before he leaves. At night, Sherri starts feeling guilty about the hoax, having seen how much everyone is worried about her. More so, Sherri wants to be with her children more than anything else.
I need to get back to my kids immediately.
That's why she decides to return to Keith, but she needs to make her kidnap look more credible. That's why she tells Chris to beat her up. Chris obeys her and cries as he shoots his hockey pucks at her, being deeply in love with her. On Thanksgiving Day at 4:30 a.m., Sherri turns up on the side of the road, bruised up and with chains around her waist. She flags down a car, and the woman driving it lets her in. Sherri acts traumatized as she utters her name. The woman immediately recognizes Sherri as the missing Sherri Papini everybody is looking for and calls 911. Detective Molly calls Keith and tells him his wife has been found. Keith rushes to the hospital where his wife is. Molly tells him to wait since the police are running Sherri's clothes through DNA. Eager to see his wife, Keith insists he wants to see her. Molly has no choice but to allow him. Keith rushes to the 3rd floor and tearfully reunites with his wife. Shortly after, Molly decides to ask Sherri a few questions, wanting to know who kidnapped her. Sherri acts like she's traumatized and paranoid and says she was kidnapped by ex-cops. She'll only talk to her husband. Having no choice, Molly has Keith do the questioning. Sherri tells them 2 Latino women kidnapped her and tortured her. The women were also speaking Spanish all the time. As Keith asks for more details, Sherri guilt trips him into stopping the questioning. She tells him she deliberately dropped her phone and a lock of her hair on the side of the road only to help him find her. Skeptical about Sherri's kidnap, Molly tells Anthony women wouldn't kidnap other women.
Women almost never kidnap other women.
What's more baffling is that the detectives don't understand why Sherri was kidnapped in the first place. Shortly after, Keith makes a statement to the press and thanks everyone who helped him to find Sherri. Balloon releases are held to welcome Sherri home. As he returns home with his wife, Keith is swarmed by reporters. Sherri finally reunites with her children and hugs her mother, whom she hasn't seen in a long time. 1 week later, Molly learns about an unknown male DNA found on Sherri's clothes, not female DNA. This DNA is not Keith's. That means Sherri was not kidnapped by 2 Latino women as she claimed.
There was male DNA found on her underwear.
That's why Molly starts suspecting Sherri and determines to find out who kidnapped her. Later, Keith tries convincing Sherri to do exclusive interviews, hoping to get more money. Not wanting to do interviews, Sherri acts traumatized and tells Keith another lie about her kidnap. The kidnappers made her use kitty litter as a bathroom to relieve herself. The next day, Sherri comes to the police station and decides to give them more information about her kidnap. Molly tries to figure out the location of Sherri's female kidnappers, but all Sherri remembers is that the women spoke Spanish the whole time. She can't remember anything else. Sherri then proceeds to lie and tells Molly how her supposed female kidnappers tortured her, chained her to a pole, and fed her rice and tortillas. They also made her use kitty litter as a bathroom, but allowed her to use the shower. To Molly, that doesn't add up, so she presses Sherri about it. Sherri lies through her teeth and says she was tased the whole time, so she has problems making sense of what happened to her.
They teased me and,
Later that day, Sherri eats out with her mother. Trying to be a good mother to her daughter, Loretta says she's a good listener in case Sherri wants to open up about the torture she went through. However, Sherri antagonizes her mother. Sherri calls her abusive and tells her she hasn't forgotten a single thing about it. 3 weeks later, the Papini couple throws a party to celebrate their anniversary. During the party, Sherri talks to her friends about her kidnap. They ask her if she tried to fight off the women who tried to kidnap her. Sherri tells them her kidnappers were twice her size. That contradicts the police description where Sherri told the police the women who kidnapped her weren't that big. Noticing that, Sherri's friends ask her about it. Sherri tells them she was tortured, so her memory is a bit foggy. Keith overhears this conversation and becomes suspicious of his wife.
They ask you like do all these sketches and all these things.
Later, Sherri's ex-husband David Dreyfus comes forward and reaches out to Molly to talk about Sherri. It turns out Sherri married him long ago for his medical insurance and to get his money. David also tells Molly that Sherri is a pathological liar. She would lie even about the smallest things. More so, Sherri even claimed to David that Loretta was abusive to her when she was little. Given this information, Molly gathers the press and announces the investigation of Sherri's case is far from over. Later, Molly scours the dark corners of the internet and finds a racist post Sherri wrote long ago where she prides herself on being white, being black. Molly feels insulted by this post. Molly is also concerned since Latino people are getting assaulted because of Sherri's claims.
Sherri wrote this.
Using her maiden name, Grafe.
That night, Keith nags his wife about the kidnapping and asks if the girls who kidnapped her said anything. Sherri tells him they talked about a story in the Bible about freed slaves in English. When Keith asks if she remembers anything else, Sherri acts like she's traumatized and paranoid, saying she doesn't want to relive it. Keith insists that they go to the police, but Sherri says she does not want to go to the police. Eventually, Sherri gives in and goes to the police with her husband. She tells Molly the same lies as well as the lie about the Bible story. Fed up with Sherri's lies, Molly has the clueless Keith wait outside while she talks to Sherri in private and shows her an old police report from Loretta against her. It turns out that Sherri's mother wasn't abusive. Sherri abused herself and blamed it on her mother, which explains the strained relationship between Sherri and her mother. Hearing that, Sherri is speechless, so she leaves.
It's a police report. From your mother.
6 months later, Andrew comes forward and tells Molly he saw Sherri at his cousin Chris's home when she was reported missing. Molly tracks down Chris and watches him take out the trash. Molly goes through the garbage and takes a bottle of liquor Chris drank to see if his DNA matches the unknown male DNA found on Sherri's clothes. Shortly after, Molly confronts Chris about Sherri. Not wanting to get into trouble, Chris confesses the whole thing is a hoax. It turns out Chris and Sherri were old flames since they were young. Chris wanted to marry Sherri, but she left him for someone else. 6 months before the hoax, Sherri started a romantic relationship with Chris. She claimed her husband Keith was abusing her. That's why Sherri had Chris kidnap her. She also placed a lock of her hair, her phone, and earphones on the ground to make her kidnap look more dramatic and believable. Hearing this, Molly breaks it to Chris and tells him Sherri has a pattern of deceitful behavior and playing the victim. Sherri lied about her mother being abusive to her, and now she lied about Keith being abusive. Chris can't bring himself to hate Sherri for her lies, being deeply in love with her and knowing she's a troubled woman. Later, Keith gets a call from the police telling him the kidnappers have been found.
I think they found them.
It is exciting news for Keith, but it is surely bad news for Sherri. At the police station, Molly tells the Papini couple the true culprit has been found before she shows them Chris's picture. Armed with evidence and the information she found earlier, Molly confronts Sherri about her hoax. Sherri was planning to walk out on Keith to be with Chris, so she had Chris kidnap her after telling him that Keith was abusive to her. Molly also reveals that the DNA found on Sherri's clothes was Chris. This information is a lot to digest for Keith. Feeling betrayed, Keith walks out of the room without uttering a single word to his wife. Feeling victorious, Molly gloats and reminds Sherri of a racist post she wrote long ago where she brags about attacking Latino women. Molly also reminds Sherri she fooled the city into paying her $150K that could have been paid to real kidnap victims, which is fraud. Sherri is still in denial and insists she's a victim. Later on, Sherri takes her kids to kindergarten. An undercover agent tracks her and tells the police to get in position. The agent tricks Sherri into going outside where she finds the police walking toward her. Sherri tries running away, but gets arrested for fraud before Molly reads Sherri her rights. In the interrogation room, Keith visits his wife and tells her he's filing for divorce. He's also taking custody of the kids. That devastates Sherri,
Stop lying.
as she starts rationalizing the hoax and tells Keith he was not attentive to her needs. Keith tells her she's shallow and empty-hearted. No great amount of attention will fulfill her. Keith then walks out, leaving Sherri begging him to come back. Meanwhile, Molly gathers the press and tells them all about Sherri's hoax and that she was arrested for fraud. By pretending to be a victim of kidnapping, Sherri fooled the city into paying her $150K that should have gone to real victims. On September 19th, 2022, Sherri's trial takes place. Sherri pleads guilty and admits she lied about her kidnapping. She's also ready to face the consequences of what she did. The judge sentences Sherri to 18 months in prison and 36 months of supervised probation. Sherri also has to pay over $300K in restitution. To fix the broken parts of herself, Sherri decides to go to therapy and get some help before serving her sentence. After these events, Keith got divorced from Sherri. He's currently living with his children in real life. Sherri is currently serving her 18-month sentence in prison.